we start. So welcome to our third and final warm-up webinar. These are in partnership with the Russell Group. So we're hosting these in preparation for our event on Wednesday, our Russell Group virtual event. Hopefully we can see a lot more of you there as well. So here we have 8 lovely student ambassadors from 8 of the Russell Group universities, and they'll be here to answer all of your questions. I think it's going to be a really good session. They have a lot of insight into this, and they're probably the best people you can ask about student life. So if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat, and we'll be looking at it throughout the event, and we'll be answering as many as we can. So yeah, please just remember to write it down, and they will get around to answering your question if we have time. So, are we ready? So we're going to start with our first question is from Shay from Durham University. So, hi, Shay, how are you? So our first question is, what has it been like studying in a pandemic, and how are you finding it now?
Well, a bit about me. I study environmental geoscience at Durham. I'm just going into my second year at the moment. So it's been quite interesting because obviously the whole of my first year was quite disrupted by the pandemic. I did have some in-persons, so my department was under the Earth Sciences, which is quite small. So I was able to have some in-persons for first term, and the rest of my lectures and practicals were all online. So I think that made it a little bit easier to study because I still got to have some sense of like a typical university experience. But overall, it was quite difficult because it's quite a lot to adjust to just going to university in general and learning in a different way. And it's even harder when you're doing it remotely. But I think one of the things that I just tried to do was make sure that I was open with staff if I needed help with extra things. Just like asking questions. We have an open door policy in our department, so they're really easy to talk to about things as well. And also just like connecting with students. It was a bit weird because like you have Zoom meetings, so it's not the normal way that you'd meet other students. But if you talk with them, and also we have, because I do a STEM degree, in our practicals we have demonstrators, and they are often able to like help you answer questions and things like that as well. So that helped to learn, even though I wasn't learning like in an actual classroom most of the time. And then also I think having a structure around learning, I think because I was learning online most of the time, it's a bit harder because if there's nothing else to do other than study, you end up studying more. But I think it's really good to make sure that you try and balance and make sure that you still have breaks in your learning. You're not just spending all your time studying in the pandemic. But I think this year things have opened up a lot more. So going into second year, I think all but one of my modules is online, and that module that's online is only online for part of the term, so it should be much more normal again, hopefully. Yeah, so it's been quite good overall because there's been some mitigating factors that have helped, but I think it's definitely better to learn when you can do it in person.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for your answer. That was really informative. And yeah, hopefully as things start to get a bit better, then we can return to more in-person learning. So now we're going to move on to Morgan from Cardiff University. So Morgan, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so our question for you is, what is your workload like and how do you manage this?
Yeah, so for reference, I'm going into my final year of medical engineering at Cardiff Uni. So as I'm sure a lot of you can imagine, a subject like engineering, it is a very big workload, like I'm going to be honest. It very much depends on the course. Some courses are more reading based, some are more in-person lecture based, some are very practical based. Just in my personal experience, mine has been very, very lecture heavy and quite practical heavy. So for my course, it's about 20 to 30 hours a week, and you are expected to match that outside of school. Obviously, in the first couple of weeks, you don't always fully match it, but come exam season, you tend to match it and then some. So my best advice is to find a work-life balance that works for you. So I know some of my friends get up at 5 in the morning every morning, and then they don't study past 3. And some people work a 9 to 5 schedule. For me personally, I'm a bit more of like a late bird. So I don't like to work before 12, and like I don't like to work before midday, but then I will work through till 1, 2 in the morning. I'm a night owl, and that's a healthy work-life balance for me personally. So it's a lot of figuring out what works for you. Try early mornings. If you're not a morning person, you know you're not going to wake up at 5 a.m. If you go to bed at 9 p.m. every night, you know you're not going to work until 1, 2 in the morning. So find a healthy work-life balance. I'd also say, honestly, when you come to uni, keep some sort of a to-do list or a notebook where you can write things down. In my first year, I was really bad for overbooking myself. I would double, triple book myself because I wasn't keeping a list of what I was doing at what times. And now, like, the academic term hasn't technically started for me, but I already have all the academic dates written down. It's my final year, so I have my dissertation deadline written down already. I have the exam season written down already. And that helps with things like if you want to do something with your friends, because obviously you have to have a good work-life balance. If you want to, go for a weekend away with your friends or go for a night out with your friends, you know that you have nothing due the next day. Or if you want to go out on a Saturday, you know you have no work due on Monday. So it gives you that freedom to have a lot more flexibility. And the most important thing is you don't have to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to forget about certain things. And that's okay. No one's expecting you to be perfect. The workload does take some getting used to. But in my experience, I found the jump from A levels to uni a lot easier workload wise than I found the workload difference between GCSE to A level. So if you guys have managed to survive that workload jump, uni is really, honestly, not as bad as that, in my opinion. And a lot of my friends share the same opinion. So it's just don't work too hard, don't play too hard. Just make sure you find a nice, happy medium that's good for you. And whatever works for you, don't let someone else say that it's not the right way. Some people will say you have to work early in the morning. Some people will say you have to work a 9 to 5 schedule. Some people work on the weekend, some people don't. It's what works for you, and that's the most important thing. So thank you, and I hope that helps.
Wonderful. Thank you, Morgan. That's really informative. Lots of handy tips there as well, which I think we all found very useful. So now on to our third question is Hannah from the University of Edinburgh. So hi, Hannah. How much time do you spend in class, and do you study when you're not in your class?
So similar to Morgan, I'm going into my final year. I'm doing immunology with business. So I've had kind of a weird mix of what my amount of time in class is, as Morgan was saying, lots of people have, just based on your degree course, will have different amounts of contact hours. For sciences, I found it quite a lot of contact hours for most courses, at least at Edinburgh. It's usually 2 or 3 lectures a week, and they tend to be 50 minutes, especially in your first 3 years here. And then when you get into your final year, they tend to go for, 2 lectures a week, but they're like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Outside of that, then you have some tutorials. It will be about an hour per course each week, maybe every 2 weeks. And then for the science courses, we've got labs, which can be quite time consuming. They can be 3 or 4 hours because you've got to do a lot of prep work and a lot of running around. And then, so each term we'd have 3 of those courses. So that's, 6 lectures a week, about 6 hours-ish of lectures, then 3 of tutorials, and then labs, which may alternate. But again, that's very specific for my course. Other courses that have a practical element will be on placement all day, whereas one of my flatmates does history and he seems to barely ever be, and he has very few contact hours, but then he's always reading. So then it really does come into how much time you should be studying outside of your course. And again, like Morgan was saying, that will definitely fluctuate throughout the year. At the minute, 'cause it's the start of term, it feels very relaxed, it's really just reading over your lectures before you go, so you've got an idea, doing any reading they've recommended. But then during exam time, it's really full on like kind of all the time, because you need it to be. Well, at least I do. I really like to cram everything in. And I think what you want to do with your own study, like how you want that study to be. If you want that to be in the library by yourself, just going through the lecture, taking notes, or if you want that to be in a group setting where you're going through it together and it's much more relaxed, like you can do a balance of that. It doesn't always, just because you're doing your own study doesn't mean like you have to be in the library just by yourself, like hunched over a book. There's lots of different ways to do it. We get the same kind of recommendation for like per hour of contact teaching, you do an hour of your own. I tend to feel that I go a bit over that just because I think when I do the lectures myself, I don't know how the lectures fit in 50 minutes, but when I read it over myself, it probably takes me more like an hour and a half to get through a lecture, just so I know I'm fully understanding it. But there'll be weeks when you feel it's a lot easier. Tutorials can maybe it will be like they just want you to read over a paper and then come and discuss it. Whereas other ones, they'll be like, they want you to fully understand it, come with questions answered, and then it will be more of a discussion. So the workflow does fluctuate. I found the contact hours, they can be at first, it seems at first when you come from A levels, you're like, oh my gosh, I only have to be in like 2 times, like for 2 hours today. Like that's nothing. Whereas like you're used to being at school all day. But then this is exactly like they're saying, like you do have to put your own study time into that. Just because you're not in uni doesn't mean like you can just lie in bed, although like sometimes you do, and that's okay as well. Like you do have to have a bit of a balance. But I think just being aware that like when you aren't in lectures, that time does need to be spent on something else quite a lot. So I'd say the contact hours, they're not overwhelming by any means, but you just do have to supplement them with your own studying just to make sure you're on top of it. I find it really helpful to do, like, I find that when I've got that slot of time for myself and I've had the chance to look over the lecture before, I then find the lecture a lot easier, a lot like more enjoyable, because I feel like I'm not sitting there the whole time just confused. I actually know what's happening. So I think it really does benefit you to spend your own time studying. And then outside of that, of course, you'll have coursework, and that does take up a bit more time, but that's when you're writing your essay, so it's not too bad. I think that's all from me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hannah, shedding a bit more light into how we can work outside of our lessons and how to deal with our lesson load. So now we're over to the University of Exeter with Morgan. So Morgan, could you tell us, where do you live? So do you live in a house, in halls, or at home? And what do you think is best in your opinion?
Thank you, Tyler. So yeah, my name's Morgan. I'm at Exeter University. And I'm a 4th year business economics student. I did a year out last year, so my accommodation is a little bit different. My 3rd year I actually spent in London, but back in Exeter this year. And I guess the first thing to say is it's okay to live wherever university. These days, all of the lectures are uploaded online. So if you're working from home, you know, if you're living at home with your parents, then that's absolutely fine. You'll still be able to access all the lectures. But most people, I guess these days, are living at university, and there's a sort of standard structure, I'd say, to how people do student accommodation. So in your 1st year, you're likely to be in student halls, and there's a range of different options. In my 1st year, I was in a catered accommodation, and actually I started in a shared room, which is quite unusual these days. I didn't actually get on very well with my roommate, so I actually moved out within 6 weeks. Most universities, you know, well-being really is number one. So you'll be able to call up, you should be able to change rooms if stuff isn't quite right for you. So in my case, if you don't like your roommate, or if you don't enjoy your flat, then there's always the option to move. And in terms of self-catered and catered, you'll hear that a lot, especially when you're going around universities. But what does that actually mean? So in catered halls, you are cooked for. The way I saw it back in 1st year was, you know, it's like having your mum's cooking at home. It's like eating at the school cafeteria. It means you've got a lot more free time on your hands because you don't have to worry about food. And it was really nice. And the hall's cafeteria was a great place to meet new people, socialise, and I really enjoyed it. However, I would say that definitely look into the meal times. Definitely look into what you get, because it differs from university to university. And in my case, I so I'm just reading the chat. Hopefully everyone can hear me. In my case, I eat at really unusual times. I like getting up really early. Oh, sorry, there you go. Yeah, hopefully that's a little bit better. If you just put in the chat, but you can hear me. Anyway, I enjoy eating really early because I like going to the gym. I like getting out and about and doing my work. So definitely look at the meal times and what works for you. And then I guess after that, you move out into the town. So in Exeter, that's done quite early. You know, everyone will rush you into it. You decide to live with a group of people. And in my opinion, living in the house is a lot better. So in terms of what I find best, I definitely say living out in a house because you actually have the independence. In your first year, you may be living with a flat. You might like people, you might not like some people. But living out in town, you get to live with your friends and you've always got the freedom. You have a kitchen, you have a whole house rather than just living out of one room. So that's been my experience. In my second year, I lived with 5 other people, 3 girls and 3 guys. And I'm still really close with them now. You may not enjoy living with some of your housemates, you may, but that's all part of the uni experience, I guess, and sort of finding out who's good at doing the washing up and who isn't. So yeah, now I'm in 4th year. I'm living with completely new people I've never lived with before. And again, maybe that's another thing to mention, that at university there's sort of overall university chat. So at Exeter, it's overheard at Exeter, and it's really easy. Say you need to fill a spot in your house, you can easily post on there. And say you don't have any housemates to live with, then you can find new people on there, like we've done this year. So it's a really flexible system, and at university, it's much more fun than living at home with your parents, in my opinion. You know, you have the independence, the freedom to do what you like, and to really sort of explore the uni town. I think that's everything. Hopefully I answered everything, Tyler. Back over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Morgan. That was a very detailed insight into that. And I think we all heard about different experiences. So yeah, as Morgan says, it does kind of depend on who you're living with and what you enjoy. So there are lots of options out there to suit everyone. So moving on to University of Leeds, we have Emma. So Emma, how do you budget and what are the costs really like as a university student?
Hiya, so I'm Emma. I just completed my bachelor's degree at the University of Leeds, where I was studying English Lit. For me, I'm a pen and paper kind of person. I think it comes with the territory of doing English Lit. So I kept a book between my first and second year where I recorded my monthly outgoings for different things such as travel, food, entertainment and medical expenses. And then I used my first year figures to set a budget for my second year. And I mostly stuck to it quite well. It also helped me. January and March were always my cheapest months, and it made sense that these months were more expensive because they included holidays like Christmas and they marked the beginning of term, and therefore I had larger purchases like food to restock my shelves. I set a time aside at the end of every month to record my finances, that before making any big purchases, banking to keep on top of spending. Friends of mine had apps that they used, and many of them also made intricate spreadsheets to manage their budget. One guy even made a spreadsheet with price comparisons from lots of different supermarkets to figure out how he could make different recipes for the cheapest amount of money. But I was never that hardcore. In my thing, I come from Northern Ireland and in wide account where I centralised all of my money. Lots of online banking providers allow you to categorise your spending and set budgets, which is what I did in my final year. In terms of what the costs are really like, the short answer is variable. It greatly depends on your circumstances. There are lots of ways to be economical through the accommodation you choose, the places you shop at, and the activities you choose to do. For example, I come from Northern Ireland, and student finance in Northern Ireland is far less generous than student finance in England. My loan in my first year didn't cover my rent, whereas in my second year I had a combination of which isn't repayable. To give you a proper idea, my rent in my first year was £105 per week with bills included, and this was university provided student accommodation. In my second year, my rent was £85 per week with bills included, and this was the private landlord. And in my third year, my rent was £107 per week without bills included, because I wasn't there so often due to COVID. A bit more money, particularly in my first and third years, to cover other expenses. And to do this, I took on jobs which paid quite decently and had quite flexible hours to fit alongside my degree. These jobs provided me with money for groceries, which I budgeted at about £15 per week, or £40 for 2 weeks in my third year, because I chose to have groceries delivered and spread the cost. As I previously mentioned, there are more expensive months at the start of each term, and to manage these, I set money aside and tried to avoid extra costs where possible. For example, as an English lit student, rather than purchasing all of my set texts, I would find the reading list early and then borrow them from like membership fees for signing in classes, and instead chose societies with a flat fee which covered you for the whole year. But it's all about preference and budgeting for these things. I would say don't go over the top in your first week and sign up to lots of society memberships that you don't need. There are lots of other ways to save as well, such as student membership deals, and it works out as a good bit. Cheaping things like train tickets in advance can save you a lot of money, and being realistic about what you need regarding things like kitchen utensils and stationery when you move in can also save you a good deal of money in the long term. It's also worth keeping in mind that if you do encounter any financial issues while at uni, there's shit for it, and you can apply. And that's pretty much everything from me.
Lovely. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for your tips on how to budget. They were very informative. Lots of nice ways for students to find out what works for them and how they can make the most of their budget. So moving on to the University of Nottingham, we have Benedict now. So hi, Benedict. So could you tell us, how easy was it for you to make friends? And do you have any tips for us?
Hi everyone, so yes, I'm Benedict. I'm a third year economics student at the Uni of Nottingham. I thought it was really easy to make friends, especially in at the start of first year, because everyone is in the same boat. Everyone wants to make friends, so you talk to one person and then build up a bit of connection with them. I think definitely like what I found was getting people on social media is very important. If you get them on Snapchat or something like that, then you can message them and meet up again. But otherwise, if you don't get them on the social media, you can sometimes just kind of lose contact and you don't really build that relationship. But I found that I think I was in catered halls, so at meal times it was very easy to kind of, you just go and sit next to some people, whoever they were, and then just talk to them, and it was very social time, meal times. And then also kind of sports. So I played table tennis in my first year, and that was a great way to meet new people. And the sport would do like socials where we'd, go out and or go to the pub and whatever. And society is also a great way to meet people. And then just especially like in your halls and just like knowing your neighbours. And I was in a very social hall where it was all kind of open plan. So you could kind of go wherever you wanted in the hall, which is really good. And I felt like I fairly quickly built up quite a nice group of friends. But make sure like don't put too much pressure on Freshers Week that immediately you might not meet the people you're going to be best friends with. I know I didn't. I kind of met people and then you decide after a few weeks maybe they're not quite your you know, you haven't got like a really good connection with them, and then you kind of meet other people, and over time, I know definitely in second semester for me, second semester, first year is when I really built up the kind of really close friendships. But no, I think as long as you put yourself out there and, you know, join societies, join sports, or just kind of make sure you're out and about in your hall, then I think it's easy to make friends. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you, Benedict. Yeah, I think that's quite a big concern for a lot of students. And yeah, I certainly agree. I feel like second semester was the best time to find your good friends who'll stick with you. So yeah, I think that's really helpful. And the benefits of social media, so it's not all bad. So moving on to Queen's University Belfast now, and we have James. So hi, James. So our question for you is, have you had support and planning for your career? And a big question, what do you want to do when you graduate, if you've thought?
Yeah, so just a bit about me. So I've graduated in biomedical science here at Queen's University. I'm currently studying a master's in cancer medicine. So I did not make use of really the career service during my undergraduate studies, as I knew that I would that I wanted to continue studying basically and undertake a master's in cancer medicine. However, the careers, employabilities and skills service at Queen's University was very much promoted to students to make the most of the services available and to equip them with the skills and qualities to make them more employable and to ultimately stand out between other students. From what I can remember, there was CV writing workshops, online tutorials of how to perfect a CV, and also to make it like more specific to your chosen field of study. Also, there were sessions that you could book with your advisor of studies to talk about career options, and also to run through the virtual interview process. So my advisor of studies last year was constantly sending out emails to our year group to encourage to apply for job opportunities, and very much encouraged us to apply for jobs early on in the academic year. So my only regret would be that I didn't make use of the support that was thrown at me last year. However, we're also encouraged not only to focus on our studies, but also to think about the skills and qualities that you can obtain through extracurricular activities, or maybe even through volunteering with the wider university on board very early on during my studies at Queen's. One of them being working as a residential assistant within Queen's Accommodation, which I have been doing now for the third consecutive year running. So this opportunity has given me the chance to work with students from all different backgrounds and cultures, allowing me to run and organise social events for students. Also for me, I'm used to speaking at student panels and working as a student ambassador for Queen's University, which has been so rewarding to be able to provide prospective students with advice and knowledge about what university experience is like. So to make yourself more employable, it is important that for employers that you get involved with clubs, sports and societies. Also, I was a member of the Biomedical Science Society last year. Although I didn't really partake in any sports, I used the gym as in my spare time to get a break from studying. In relation to the second part of the question about what I want to do after I graduate, this is something that I'm still currently thinking about. So the reason for doing a master's was to allow me to make a clear decision about whether I wanted to study a PhD or to go into the medical industry straight away. So therefore, I'm not entirely sure about what I want to do after I graduate. But this year will allow me to make a better idea about what I wanted to do. So I would advise students that it's okay not to be entirely sure about what you want to do after you graduate, although it is important that you gain the transferable skills that will make yourself more employable, and that's what employers look at and look for. So yeah, I hope I've answered both of them questions.
Amazing. Thank you, James. That was really informative. And yeah, I feel like a lot of people might not know what they want to do after they graduate. So don't worry if you don't have a firm fixed idea. There's lots of help on hand. So moving on to our final question of the first round, and we're moving on to Eleanor at the University of Sheffield. So hi, Eleanor. So our question for you is, how did you decide which university to go to, and what advice would you give us if we plan to visit a university?
Hi everybody. So my name's Eleanor. I'm a recent graduate at the University of Sheffield in BSc Geography. So that was a 3-year degree. And so to pick university in the first place, I'm guessing you're all like in the position of now, like, oh, which university do I pick? And I think the easiest thing I'd say to you is like open days. Definitely go to open days and see which universities like offer what and what course you want to see and study, because you might be thinking, I don't know which university and also I don't know which course. So definitely go to open days. That was like the predicament I was in year 12 and year 13. Of like, I don't know which uni I want to go to. I did know that I wanted to study geography. So it was just depending like which uni I went to. But a good thing about my sixth form is we had like a day dedicated to going to this UCAS open day at Sheffield Arena, which meant that loads of different universities from like across the country were there. So it was like a perfect opportunity to ask them questions and like take prospectuses and look through that, and also like look online as well and ask them like questions about the university and also the city itself. So I think one piece of advice I'd give you is go to open days. And maybe UCAS fairs, stuff like that, if they're available for you to ask them questions and get them prospectuses. You probably will end up with a bookshelf full of prospectuses. That's how many you'll pick up, but it's definitely worth it. So yeah, open days, and also I did a lot of like research online because I ended up at University of Sheffield, and I'm close by to Sheffield, so I like moved the city already, and my sister came to the university, so I kind of like had ties with it already, so I kind of like knew what it was like. But Sheffield's a Russell Group university, and I thought, well, it's important to me to apply to Russell Group. My firm choice was Sheffield, and then my insurance choice was Lincoln, which is like completely different to Sheffield in terms of like where they're located, like the course they offer. That's the most important thing as well, is like every university will offer different courses. So at Sheffield, like one of the selling points for me was A, it's a Russell Group university, and B, the course looked great. So in my second year, it was compulsory to go to, it was a compulsory trip to go to Spain, which meant that that was included in your fees. You didn't have to pay a penny towards it. It was basically a free trip. So that was kind of like a selling point to me. I was like, oh, I really want to go on field trips, it's kind of an important thing. And in my third year was the option to go to New Zealand as well. That wasn't compulsory, so you didn't have to pay for that. But it's just about the opportunities there are at university, and it does differ uni to uni. But unfortunately, because of COVID, like I couldn't actually go to Spain, which was a bit annoying, but it's fine anyway. So yeah, that's kind of what made me decide to go to Sheffield. And then with the Lincoln one, which kind of like made me put as insurance, is because the grade entries were actually lower. And that's one piece of advice to give you as well. It's kind of like, just in case your A levels don't go as planned, you achieve lower grades, maybe like put as an insurance choice a university that's got lower grade entries than your firm. So for geography at Sheffield, it was 2 A's and a B, and then at Lincoln, I think it was like BBC, so quite lower. So yeah, just in case your A levels don't go as well as you hope, then at least you've kind of like got a backup plan. But I liked Lincoln. I went to go and visit the city, and I love it. But again, the other thing so I went to university in 2018. That's when I first started my first year. And at Lincoln, that was the first year that they offered geography. And I kind of didn't want to be like the guinea pig kind of cohort of students to start at Lincoln. So I decided again like to go to Sheffield. That was another reason why I went in. But yeah, as a general like thing I'd say to you all is maybe mind map the reasons why you want to go to a certain university, like what's important to you. So is it location? Do you want to move far away from home? Do you want to stay quite close to home so you can commute, or you actually want to live at university itself? For me, although I'm close to Sheffield, I knew that I didn't want to live at home. I wanted to like have my own independence and like move out. So that's what I did. Yeah, so like location, also like the course, what the city's like, is it got a good nightlife, kind of like things what matter to you, maybe rank them in importance, and then maybe you can like find out which university you like from that. Or similarly, you might think, I already know which university I want to go to, but it's still worth checking out an open day, or if there's no open days available, you know, like in person, maybe virtually, or just go and visit the city. All the university buildings will be open like all year round anyway, because students are there. So even if you don't have an open day, then you can probably go to the city and maybe sneak into a library or something and see. So yeah, so basically to round up, go to open days, see the city for itself, because you're not just going to the university, you're going to the city. You want to make sure you feel safe and you like it, like the vibe's good, the course is good, and just do some research about it as well. And yeah, it's also a good opportunity to like speak to lecturers and academics and also current students. So for me doing geography, like I want to speak to current students to be like, what is it actually like? Like give me, you know, the facts instead of somebody saying, oh yeah, it's great, selling kind of thing, but selling the dream, but maybe it's not as true. But it's just a good opportunity to speak to student ambassadors and just be like, yeah, like what's it like studying geography at Sheffield? You know, you can kind of sense what it's like. So yeah, I hope that answers the question for you.
Amazing, thank you, Eleanor. Some really good tips there. And yeah, very informative. So just a quick reminder to everyone attending, this webinar will be recorded and it will be emailed to everyone who's pre-registered for the event. So if you want to rewatch it and note down any of the tips, then feel free. So we're also going to get into our second round of questions. So just a quick thank you to our panelists once again for all of your answers. They've been great so far. So we're going to move back over to the University of Durham with Shaya. Our question to you is, are you involved in any societies, and would you recommend students join them throughout university or only in a specific year to help manage the workload?
I definitely think it's worth joining throughout the years at university. As a first year, there's less workload and less pressure in general, so it's a good time to get involved with things other than your degree. It's also a great way of meeting new people, which is especially important in first year as well. So in first year, I was involved in ACS, which is African Caribbean Society, and DPOCA, which is Durham People of Colour Association, and I also took part in Boat Club, which is basically rowing at Durham, and I did that at college and university level. So because Durham is a collegiate university, we have college societies as well as university-wide societies, which are generally for sports, which is really nice because it means that you can take part at different levels. So if you want to do a sport very competitively, or you currently do a sport at a very high level, then you would more likely go towards the university, the Team Durham version, although not all sports have a Team Durham, but for a lot of the big ones they do, or the very small ones that are niche. So for example, if you do maybe polo, like equestrian polo, then that would probably be a Team Durham sport, because it's generally not enough people, there's generally not enough people that would do it to have one for each college. But the bigger sports, like for example, swimming, rowing, rugby, they will be a Team Durham version and then also a college version. So I did Team Durham rowing, and then I also did college rowing for my college. But it was a bit difficult because of the pandemic. It wasn't like fully active. So the most active societies I was part of were probably the social ones, so ACS and DPOCA. And then I also was part of my department society. So because I do a geological science, I'm part of the Arthur Geological Society, but there wasn't really anything that was on last year. So this year Hawley will be part of all the same societies, and then also book club, because I'm quite an avid reader, and it's something that tends to fall to the wayside a bit at university. So I thought I'd like to take part in that and read a bit more for leisure. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth joining societies throughout your time at university. You probably will find that as you progress, that you will take part in less societies, and you also find that when you join them, that you may not like some as much as others, so you won't take part in all of them. But it's good to take part, at least sign up for like freshers fairs and things like that. Not to sign up to too many, but to ones that you're interested in or you're currently part of, if you do any of those activities at home currently, and then see how you find at university, because you might enjoy it at the level you do it now, but you might not like how it manifests at university as well. And if anything, it's a chance to meet new people and do something out of your comfort zone. So I don't think there's a disadvantage to joining societies at all, but you probably will not end up doing like 5 societies by your final year. You probably will have maybe 2 or 3, but it's good. It also gives you a good break from studying, which is really important. So whether that's a sport or whether it's like music, for example, a lot of people take part in music societies or even theatre and volunteering. So pretty much all universities will have something that you're interested in. And I'm sure a lot of other universities do this, but at least at Durham, if you're interested in starting a society, it's generally quite easy to do as well, as long as you have enough people. So at Durham, you need 3 people to start a society. And then obviously from there, when you have things like freshers phase, you can recruit more people. So yeah, I definitely think it's worth joining societies.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, just goes to show there's lots of societies out there and there's something for everyone. So if you're interested in, I know a lot of unis have Quidditch society, so if that's something you want to do, then you're more than welcome to join. So we're going to move over to the University of Cardiff, and we're going to be speaking with Morgan again. So Morgan, how common are gap years, and is it better to go travelling before you go to university or after you graduate? So if you could speak from a personal point of view or someone else's, just let us know what you think.
Yeah, no problem. Obviously, everything I'm going to say is just my opinion. And if I say something and you just think that will not work for me, this is not, obviously the rules. You have to do what feels right for you. I'd say gap years are actually quite common. And in my opinion, I honestly wish they were a bit more common. Like, I didn't take a gap year. I ended up having to do a foundation year for my course. But I know so many of my friends, and I mean this in the most loving way possible, they really could have benefited from a year just out of studying. They could have worked in that time, maybe earned a bit of money before coming to university, gives people a chance to mature. And also, if you're not sure what you want to do, you're not sure if uni's the right option, you're maybe not sure if it's what course specifically, it gives you a chance just to think for another year. I understand, I remember in year 12 and year 13, I felt very like caught up in this whirlwind of applying for uni, and there was no time to think, no time to consider. It was just application, application, application. No one really spoke to me about other options, about what I could do if there wasn't university. And for example, I came to uni to do astrophysics, and I've ended up studying medical engineering because that's an option as well. You can change your course while you're at uni. And to be brutally honest, I didn't even know medical engineering existed before I was already in university. So taking a gap year does give you a bit of time just to think things through, really consider your options and make sure you're doing what's right for you. So I do wish they were a little bit more common in that sense, but there are loads of people who take them. A lot of my friends are taking gap years. So if you're thinking of taking one, you will not be the only person on your course who's taken one by a mile. Regarding traveling, I'm slightly biased because I'm actually going traveling after I graduate. Well, I'm hoping actually after I graduate to teach English as a foreign language. And so I'm hoping to do that grey area where you travel, but you also work while you're traveling. So it's a bit of both. And so personally, I would recommend traveling after university if traveling is what interests you. To be brutally honest, I did not have the finances before coming to uni to travel. There was no way I could have afforded to travel. And that's a very personal thing. You may have the finances, you may not. So again, take everything I say with a bit of a pinch of salt. But yeah, there was no way I could afford to travel. I'd love to do some sort of like interrailing, in my summer holidays, you know, when the schools are out, I'd love to do something like that. And I think uni gives you a chance to earn a bit of money. I can't remember who it was, I'm really sorry, but someone mentioned earlier, like doing ambassador work while you're in uni. I think that's what a lot of us here do. So you get a bit of money, and also you're a bit more mature when you leave uni. I know that's not a negative thing, but you've been in uni for a couple of years, you've been an adult in the real world, you have a bit more street smart, you're a little bit more conscious of the world around you. And also you kind of know what you like and don't like when you leave uni. So, for example, I know I'm someone who very, very much likes city breaks. I like being in busy, bustling cities. Some of my friends like more beach holidays, quiet seaside villages. And uni also gives you a little bit of time to figure that out. So I'm not saying, you know, traveling is an amazing thing, and I don't think you will ever regret going to a country. I think every time you travel is an amazing experience, and you can learn something from every single country. But it does give you a bit of a time to really figure out who you are. So yeah, regarding traveling, I have been very fortunate to save up quite a bit of money while I'm at uni. So that gives me a bit more freedom. And also, you're just a little bit older. You get taken a little bit more seriously when you're a little bit older. You're no longer seen as the 18-year-old that's just going traveling because they're looking for something to do. It's something you really want to do, and people will respect that. So yeah, I hope that helps. Thank you so much, guys.
Wonderful, thank you, Morgan. That's really informative as well. So yeah, the options are there if you want to travel before, after, if you want to take a gap year during. It's up to you guys. So we're going to go back to Hannah at the University of Edinburgh. So Hannah, what kind of mental health support is available at uni, and are lecturers understanding the problems at home?
So I think this is a really important thing to be very honest about, because I think coming to uni, regardless of what your situation is before, like mental health is just such an important thing, and uni can really affect that. It's a time of like a huge amount of change in a really short period, and it can be really stressful, and it can exacerbate things that are already there. It can introduce new things. So I think it's really important to be very kind to yourself and be very aware that, like, if you're thinking like, oh, I've like mental health support isn't something that's really my priority, like it's something to be, it's good to be aware of just in case you need it, that it's there. I think with a lot of unis, they've made real like strides in trying to support mental health and make the options that are there to support you a bit more evident. So we have a counselling service at Edinburgh. They're really good. They can offer you basically 3 free sessions. You get like an introductory one to kind of like talk to them, see if you think it's the right fit, what kind of route you want to go down, and they can offer you 3 free sessions, and then after that they can decide whether, you know, this is something you want to carry on, or they can give you options as to where else might be good to look if you're needing something a bit different. I'd say it is quite oversubscribed, so the 3 sessions are really good, but you might find that you need to look for extra support. There are lots of uni societies and stuff actually just based around mental health, and like are really good about like helping you find other free options. We also have the chaplaincy at Edinburgh, which I didn't really understand what it was at first, but it's not like affiliated with any kind of religious group or anything. It's in a chapel, which seems a bit funny then, but it isn't affiliated with any religious group. But they're there basically to talk to you about anything and just really be somebody to listen to, rather, or like that can listen to you rather than like a mental health professional. But that can also be a really good source of support, because I think sometimes it can just get really overwhelming. You just want somebody to chat to. In terms of lecturers, I'd say they're really understanding. I think obviously it can be quite a hard thing to talk about, especially if it's something quite personal. That can be quite a scary thing to go and talk to your lecturer about. I think if you can do it, they're very discreet about it. You can email them, or you can go and talk to them during their office hours, and they'll really try to accommodate you. We just had a talk the other week about, because we've got our dissertations coming up, and they're like, if you have any problems, like tell us as soon as possible and we'll try and sort something out for you. Like they really want to be there to support you. They can only do so much if they don't really know what's going on. So And for us, and I think a lot of unis, you get a personal tutor who's there to kind of guide you through course options and things, but they're also there just to support you and like can kind of put you onto the right track if anything's going a bit like you just need a bit of help, really. So they're really good. They can also help you get in touch with lecturers, or they can do it, you know, to kind of explain what's going on. They're really accommodating, honestly, because they want you to do well. They don't want you to struggle. They want you to be like supported, and they're there to help you. So I think the lecturers are really understanding. They'll try and make any accommodations they can for you, whether that's you just need a bit more time on assignments, or you need to go and talk to them because you missed some lectures and you just need some help catching up. They are really understanding, and they do genuinely want the best for you. I think the mental health support is really good, and I think the counsellors are amazing at their job, and they really understand. They're in a very like special spot to be able to help uni students, because the pressures that you face are different than ones that you would face when you're living at home, even if that's of issues of like moving away from home. Like they're really they've seen it all, so they're really good like sources of support, and they're really good at directing you in whatever way they think will best help you. So I think they're really good. They are just really busy, so I think if you feel like you might need to talk to somebody, just go and do it. Like you're not annoying them, anything like that, but just get in there and get yourself like some support as quickly as you can, because the sooner that you address these things, the easier they are to deal with. But they are really good. So yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Yeah, like she said, a very important topic to cover, and it's very important to take care of your mental health while you're at uni. So there's always support available. So we're going to move on to Morgan at the University of Exeter. So Morgan, does your university offer study abroad or placement year options? And in your opinion, what are the benefits of both?
Thank you. So I've taken my mic out now, so hopefully it's a little bit better as well. So as I said before, I did with industrial experience, which is a placement year working at a firm. And what that means is basically you take a year out in your third year of study to go and work somewhere, and then you return in the fourth year to continue and do your final year of your degree. Year abroad is similar. It is what it says on the tin. Basically, you go and spend a year studying somewhere else at a university in another country. I don't know many people who have done a year abroad. I know someone who went to Paris, in fact, and he really enjoyed it. But really, in terms of the industrial experience and a year out in terms of a placement, I couldn't recommend it more. I think it gives you, I think as Morgan said earlier, that extra year of experience, that extra year of life knowledge, that extra year of work knowledge and contacts, which you just wouldn't get in any other way. It's a lot of work to get one. In second year, I spent a lot of time doing not graduate applications, I'm doing those now, industrial placement applications. They're quite long, they're quite lengthy, there's usually a lot of stages, and often you have to apply to quite a few. But when you do get you know, the one for you, it is a really satisfying feeling. So I was at IBM. I spent a year doing sales in the technology division, and it was phenomenal. I made a lot of good friends, and even though I was working from home, I got to meet a lot of people. I lived in a house of IBM interns who were really great, and are now, you know, some of my best mates. And that was working from home, of course. If you did a placement when you guys go to uni, you'll actually get to experience maybe living in London, living in a different city, getting to see new things, try new things, and hopefully get some work experience as well. So, and also at the other end of them, you can often get graduate roles. So I've now got a graduate role at IBM, which I tell you in the final year saves you a lot of time applying to different things, and gives you a lot more job security, of course. So yeah, I couldn't recommend them more. I'm now coming back into fourth year with a completely different perspective on university, one which some of my friends are more surprised on. You know, in your first and second year, you tend to have a lot more downtime. You tend to really enjoy yourself and do a lot of society stuff. And now I'm a lot more focused on my work, a lot more career focused. I've now started a business this year. So it really does change your mindset and give you that maturity going into your final year. So I couldn't recommend them more. It was a great experience. And yeah, if the university offers them, I'd definitely take up that offer. Thank you, Tyler. Back to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Morgan. Very informative. And the sound was amazing, thank you. So we're going to move over to Emma now at the University of Leeds. So Emma, what did you wish you knew before choosing your university?
So I've had a bit of a think about this, and I think the thing I wish I'd known is more about the specific modules and course content on my course. When I applied to my university, I did lots of reading up about societies and about accommodation options, action of the university, and I looked at things like the entry requirements for my subject, but I didn't spend enough time looking at specific course-related information. I wasn't clear on what I was specifically going to learn in first year, what my options would be in second year, what my options would be in third year. And I regret that. I was very lucky that the module choices at Leeds were very, very broad and very diverse. There was also the option to do these things that at Leeds are called discovery modules, which is where you have a certain number of credits. Some subjects that offer you quite a few, some don't. But you get a certain number of credits that you can use on other modules outside of your school. And it sort of just lets you broaden out what you're studying. And so that was a really exciting thing that I sort of found out about when I arrived. But I wish I'd known about those things in advance, like a bit more. I met a lot of people on my course who had sort of done that preparation, looked at those modules and had done pre-reading around those things. And so I felt a little bit like I was starting off on the back foot. Do not let that worry you. You absolutely can go in and not know about modules. I did, and it was fine. But I think that is what I would change. And I know that other people around me felt the same. There was a close friend and she was doing maths, and how many of her module requirements were maths related and how many were economics related. So when she wanted to move towards economics in first year, she was less able to than she thought she would be. But again, that was sort of a personal thing. It wasn't the fault of the university. All the information was there, and it's just about sort of getting yourself informed before you go. But yeah, that's what I wish I knew. I'll pass you back to Tyler.
Wonderful, thank you, Emma. And just a reminder to everyone, keep posting on questions in the Q&A below, and we'll get around to answering those if we have any more time. But we're going to move back over to Benedict at Nottingham University. So Benedict, is having a car necessary at university, and what are public transport options like?
So I think this is quite a personal question, and it depends on your circumstances, really. I know for me, I don't have a car, and I don't think it's worth it. So in Nottingham, there's a great tram system. There's also buses, and in terms of where I'm located so I'm in like the student area outside of the campus, and that's like a 20-minute walk to town and a 20-minute walk to campus. So you don't really need a car, but it does depend. If you're going and working somewhere, and you might need to drive to work, or if you want to go home often, you might want to drive back home. So it is up to you, but it's definitely not necessary, I wouldn't say, for most people at least. But it can be nice to have a car if you're able to afford all the costs and everything. Then it can help to kind of open your options a bit. You can go on a nice day trip, or you don't have to carry your shopping all the way back or whatever. But no, I wouldn't say it's necessary.
Wonderful, thank you, Benedict. So yeah, again, having a car, I guess it is very personal to you and your lifestyle. So as Benedict says, it's not definitely necessary. So we're going to move back over to James at Queen's University Belfast. So James, were there any surprise costs when you got to university, and is there any support from the university in case you should run out of money?
For me, I would say, yeah, there was a lot of hidden costs when starting university. When you're 17 or 18, I don't think actually you have the real value of money and how much things cost. And therefore, it takes quite a while to get used to how much it is for living costs, for example, accommodation, how much it is, how much money you spend for food each week, and then also having enough money for just things, unexpected costs, for example, shopping or going out socializing with friends, having a few drinks. And yeah, I think you underestimate how much it actually is when you're at university and how much money you actually spend. Therefore, it's so good to have a budget in place and to record how much money you're spending each month or each week, and then budgeting around that, because that's something that I definitely had to do during my first couple of years. But then, so I work for Queen's Accommodation, so I get my accommodation paid for me. So I've been getting free accommodation past the years, which is something that I don't have to worry about anymore, which is good. So in return, I work for Queen's Accommodation for 15 hours a week, and yeah, in return, I get free accommodation. So for me, that works, and it's a big help. But if you're at university, definitely I would recommend to get that extra bit of money or cash, definitely getting a job if you can, if you have the time and if you can afford to have the time. But yeah, so in relation to the second part of the question, so Queen's University have like a hardship fund, which students can apply to if they do face financial difficulty. This year, currently for my master's, Student Finance Northern Ireland don't pay the full cost of my master's, so I've had to essentially pay the remainder, 25% of my master's, to Queen's, and there is no other support really available other than bursaries or scholarships that are very competitive, and very hard to get hold of. But it's something that you definitely can apply for, and hope for the best. Other than that, obviously you have to take into account maybe loans from a bank or something, but obviously they come with difficulty, and sometimes they may not always work out. So yeah, I'd pass it back to you.
Lovely, thank you, James. That's very informative, and hopefully you guys have got a bit more insight into the hidden costs at university. So now on to our final question of round 2. We're going to go back to Eleanor at University of Sheffield. So Eleanor, what advice would you give to students in year 12 looking at applying to Russell Group universities, and how can they make that application stand out?
First of all, I'd say definitely do apply to Russell Group universities. I think it's important to like aspire high and apply to them, especially if you get in, like that's amazing. And if you see a course that you really want to do, then why not? I think you get like 5 choices on UCAS anyway, so like why not apply to Russell Group University? I'd say do that. Just like I mentioned before, Sheffield was my firm and Lincoln were my insurance, and Sheffield was the only Russell Group University that I applied for, and then I got in. I definitely don't have any regrets about choosing Sheffield. Like, it was the best 3 years of my life, honestly. So definitely do apply to the universities you want to apply to, but also Russell Group as well. A good thing about Russell Group universities, so there's 24 in the country, and they basically mean that they very much specialise in research. There's a lot of money being pumped into universities, Russell Groups, for research and innovation. So at Sheffield, engineering is like the biggest department here, and we have like a massive, I think we're like the biggest investment we've had at the university, like 80 million in our engineering department. It's called the Diamond Building. So you get like really great teaching facilities, you get world-class leading academics and lecturers and stuff. So like that's worth applying to Russell Group universities. I'm not saying that other universities don't have like great teaching facilities and stuff, but definitely Russell Groups do, because they have the money to do that. I can speak personally for Sheffield, like I know that they have a lot of money that goes into it from investments and stuff from other companies and that. So yeah, especially for engineering, like really great for that. And I'd say advice for applying to Russell Group universities in your application. So when it comes to your personal statement, it literally just depends on the university you're applying for. Some universities take into account your personal statement heavily. Other universities might not even look at it, but it's definitely worth creating a good personal statement just in case. So in your personal statement, I think it's about like 4,000 characters, so which is not a lot, really, which is like one side of an A4 sheet of paper, like on Word document. So everything that you write needs to be relevant. You can't really afford to write stuff that it's not really applicable to your application and not really important, because you're probably taking up space that you could write more important things. So I'll give you like a few top tips about writing a personal statement. What I got told is never write passionate in your personal statement because it's just overdone. So I'm really passionate about this subject, like just don't do that, because the administrator is going to look at that and think, oh, I don't know, it's just one of them things that like everybody mentions. You don't really stand out from the crowd if you mention the word passionate. So go on thesaurus.com and find out a synonym other than that word. As well as that, include like why you want to do your course, what skills you have, what experience you have. Especially get work experience. I know for me personally, my sixth form was like, I had a careers advisor and we had to have work experience for a week. So that were 5 days. In year 13, we had to have work experience. I don't know if it's the same at every school and every college in sixth form, but it's definitely worth having, even if they don't tell you to have it, because you can put that on your application and you can demonstrate how you are interested in your subject. So I did geography. So I was thinking, how can I make it relevant, my work experience relevant to what I want to do? So I actually did my work experience at University of Sheffield. There's no restrictions in where you can apply for your work experience. Well, there might be some in terms of like getting DBS checks and stuff like that, but like relatively speaking, you can probably get work experience anywhere almost. So the University of Sheffield, I went with the archaeology department, and I did like some excavations for a week, which were really interesting. And then obviously I could talk about that on my CV to say that I've had work experience at University of Sheffield, what I learned, that kind of thing. Just make sure that what you mentioned on your work experience, you've got a so statement. So like I did work experience, blah, 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 so what, like, why is that relevant? So just always kind of like link it back to the relevance of why you're writing it in the first place. So like that's a piece of advice I could give you. But if you're like applying for medicine and stuff, then work experience is very relevant and you need that. And again, it's going to set you out from the crowd, especially if your course is quite competitive. You want to make sure that your personal statement is good, because I know for Sheffield they definitely do read it, and I think I think most Russell Group universities will read your personal statement. So make sure that it is good, and like talk about your interests and hobbies as well. So it's not all academic, but then make sure what you are writing is relevant. So don't just say, oh, I like going swimming on the weekends. Like, doesn't really add much to your personal statement, so don't include that if it's not interesting. So you could say, so like for me on mine, I subscribe to the National Geographic magazine, and you can just say like, why is that relevant to geography? So I said like, I'm really interested in like environmentalism and climate, and I came across this one National Geographic magazine. You're like really interested in me because X, Y, and Z. So that's just an example of like what you can include in your personal statement. You don't have to just make it academic, you can make it personal as well, and like your interests and hobbies. So yeah, that's yeah, I hope that helps.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Eleanor. Very informative, and some nice personal statement tips there too. So that's great. We're moving on to our third and final round of questions. These ones will be a bit briefer. So if you do want any more information about any of it, then please do attend our Russell Group Fair on Wednesday, and you can get some more information. So we're going to do our last round. So question 1, we're going back to University of Durham with Shaya. So our question to you is, okay, so if you move far away from home for university, how can you cope with living without your family and only seeing them during the holidays?
I think the most important thing is just to keep up communication. for me personally, I'm quite an independent person, so I live down south. I didn't intend to go so far up north for university, but I did find that because I'm quite independent, it wasn't as difficult. But I'm quite close to my family. I still talk to them pretty much every other day. So if you are someone that is a bit more worried about that, then obviously you can always talk to them. And then if you call them, for example, as opposed to texting, that also helps, like video calls, even phone calls and things like that. Then that's always useful. I think sometimes it happens a lot when you're like first starting, so like the first few weeks of freshers and stuff like that, the first year. But it's good to keep up the whole time. Like I'm going into my second year and I still talk to them very regularly. So it's an easier way of managing the fact that you don't see them physically as much. But at Durham, we have quite long holidays. So we have like a month off for Christmas and Easter. And that's a good time to go back and see family because it's just it's extended period as opposed to maybe if you have like, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks off at some of the universities. So obviously when I'm back home, I just have more time to spend with them. So I do tend to come home for the end of each term, but I also go back if there's like a birthday or like a big event that happens. And same thing with friends as well. So like friends from home, I will see them generally when I'm back home. But also we talk and call a lot as well. So I think the main thing is just to keep up communication. They're not, just because they're not physically near you doesn't mean that you can't find other ways to do things together. I guess a lot of the same ways that you keep in contact with people over, like when the pandemic meant that a lot of people were in lockdown, are the same kind of things that you can do at university in terms of distance communication. So it is possible, but it can be a little bit harder. You just have to be a bit more creative with how you stay in touch. But yeah.
Lovely, thank you. A great answer there. So we're going to go back to the University of Cardiff. So Morgan, if you're torn between two subjects, how much freedom is there to take classes outside of your degree subject? And if you do a joint honours course, is it split 50-50 or do you spend more time studying one subject?
Yeah, so just for reference, I'm not doing a joint honours course. So if any of the other panelists are, please feel free to just jump in at the end and quickly talk about it. But regarding, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. Regarding being torn, kind of going back to what I said earlier, I think gap years can be a great way to figure it out, especially if you maybe get a job that's more aligned with one of the subjects. That can give you a chance to kind of get used to it, maybe see it in more of a work thing rather than just school, because you do the core subjects in school and once you move to university, they usually get a bit more specialized. So something like a gap year can be great. Regarding doing classes outside of your, so, you know, just under the assumption now you're doing a class that is completely separate from your degree, there is definitely time. I know in Cardiff University, we offer something called the Languages for All scheme, where you can learn a language alongside of your degree completely free of charge. And we also have the Welsh for All scheme, where you can learn Welsh alongside your degree. I was learning Japanese for a year. There is definitely time to do it. However, this is course dependent. So a lot of us here are studying STEM courses. So for STEM courses, you don't have that much free time. So if you're really passionate about a language, or you're really passionate about first aid, or you're really passionate about, you know, a business class, you absolutely have the time to do it, but you may not have the time to do multiple classes. So that's just something to consider. If you want to do 4, 5, 6 things a week, you might not have time to do that on top of your degree as well. So it's really about prioritizing what you think is most important for you. And regarding the joint honours, like I said, I personally don't want to, like, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to give you guys any wrong information. So my best piece of advice would be contact the unis that you're looking at and just drop the admissions people an email and just ask, you know, ask them about it. Just say how much of this is split evenly, review the course content online, and that'll give you a good idea of how evenly the split is. So yeah, back to you, Taylor. Thank you so much.
Lovely, thank you, Morgan. Yeah, just a bit on that actually. I went to the University of Southampton and I did a joint honours course. So you generally, if you're doing it so German and English, it will be split 50-50. But if you're doing a course that says with, so German with English, then it's generally more 75% and 25%. Obviously, it does depend on the modules as well. But yeah, so as Morgan says, do get in contact with the department just to make sure you know exactly how they're doing it at your uni. So we're in the final 15 minutes, so I'll try and get through the questions as quickly as possible. So Hannah at the University of Edinburgh, how important is work experience when applying to university? And what should you do if you can't get any work experience due to the pandemic?
So this is super course dependent, because some courses will really want a lot of hands-on experience. And other courses will really just want you to prove that you've got an interest in it. I'd say if you're a course that, you know, recommends having work experience but doesn't necessarily require it, then absolutely don't stress. Make sure you've reach out to people maybe in that field and talk to them, and then you can say you've had conversations with people, you've put out like some real world experience, and you've really tried, you put in effort to get that experience. It's not super applicable for all courses, so I think really what unis want you to show in general is that you've got an interest, you've got a passion for it. If you can't get it because of the pandemic, unis understand that. I've been in lots of talks like this where the unis have basically said, like, look, we know that people aren't really willing to take in the same number of people for work experience. It's just not practical, it's not possible right now with all the restrictions. Again, just reach out, supplement it in whatever way you can. Go to talks on the subject, go to seminars, go to people in the field and say, like, look, can I just have a quick Zoom call with you? Like, I just want to chat to you and get to know a bit more about it. And then you can talk about that. You can also then put an effort to say, like, look, I can't get it right now. I won't have this work experience in time for the UCAS deadline. But if you can get it, and you can say, but I've arranged, you know, as restrictions keep easing, I've arranged to try and do some in the summer. Like, let the uni know that, let them know that you're working towards it, because that's all they want to see, is that you've got a passion for it, that you're interested in it, and that you're willing to go the extra mile. But I wouldn't stress too much about it. Everybody's in a really similar boat. It can be really stressful. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, and moving on to the University of Exeter. So Morgan, did the idea of student loan debt put you off going to university? And do you have to pay off your loan the moment you graduate?
Thank you very much. So first of all, no, it didn't put me off at all. You've probably got lots of friends in the same boat going to university, or even if you don't, you know, people don't tend to be put off by having to pay £9 a year, or just over £9 a year, and that is because of the student loan system. It's really, really good. So you don't pay anything back while you're at university. You don't even see the money into your account. Once you go through the student website, which is the student loans website, which is really, really easy to use. It takes barely any time at all. Once you go through there, they will then, student loans company will pay that money directly to your university, so you won't even see it. And that will happen the whole way through your university time, going £9 a year. And then when you finish, it's only when you start earning over £27,000, £27,295 a year, that you start paying back anything. And then it's a certain percentage then of your salary that goes out every year. So it's not like then suddenly you've got to pay it all back. It sort of goes out gradually. And all of the information for that can be found online. So if you're worried about that at all, go to the student loans website. I've just done a quick Google myself, and it's really easy to get all the details there and put your mind at rest. But no, overall, it didn't put me off, and I don't think it should put you off either.
Wonderful, thank you, Morgan. And so moving on to the University of Leeds. So Emma, do you have to apply for scholarships and bursaries before going to university, or can you apply once you're there?
So I would definitely recommend that you apply for scholarships and bursaries before you arrive at university, because scholarships are competitive and they will have been allocated by the time you arrive at university in order to pay for that year's tuition. At my school, when we were doing our uni applications and when we were applying for student finance, we were also recommended that that was the time we should start looking at bursaries and applying for bursaries. If you look on the specific university site, they should say what different bursaries they have and what their application deadlines are. And it's a good idea to sort of have those noted down if you're thinking of applying for any of them. By the time you're at university, they will have been allocated and it'll be thinking towards next year. So it's a good thing to have in mind to sort of think ahead, think about whether student finance is going to cover your course costs and whether you need to be looking to apply for scholarships and bursaries and when they would like you to do that by. I'll pass back.
Wonderful, thank you, Emma. So on to the University of Nottingham. Benedict, how can you balance a part-time job with your studies if you had a part-time job while studying, that is?
Yes, I think it's another personal one whether you get a part-time job or not. It depends on your financial situation and also your kind of how much time you have with your course and other things. So it can definitely be done, and definitely you can balance a part-time job with your studies. I think it's probably similar skills that you'll probably learn in your exams and things like that, revising for exams, you know, time management and prioritizing your work when it comes to, you know, revision season and making sure that you're kind of staying up to date and you're not falling behind any lectures or anything like that. So the way I've done things, I didn't really like the idea of having like a very kind of rigid part-time job where I knew I had to do certain shifts every week or whatever. So I signed up to uni temps. I'm not sure whether it's just a Nottingham thing or whether there's in other unis, but basically they just email you through every week lots of kind of one-off opportunities, such as things like doing accommodation tours or helping out open days, doing like focus groups, all sorts of stuff. And so things that there's no requirement for you to do them. It's just if you've got time, you can do them, and they pay quite well. They pay like the living wage, I think, the uni does. So I've kind of found ways like that aren't so kind of rigid, that are very flexible, just to kind of make a little bit of money on the side. But yeah, I think it's up to you whether you go for the part-time job. I think if you can, try to avoid it if you can, I think, just because it does make it difficult to balance everything, but it can be done. But you might have to perhaps miss out on social time a bit more, you know, have a bit less, but yeah.
Wonderful, thank you, Benedict. So over to Queen's University Belfast. So James, what's the nightlife like at university? And what options are available if you don't enjoy clubbing?
Yeah, I would say, well, in Belfast anyway, the nightlife is very good. I'm not too exactly sure what the statistics are recently, but I'm pretty sure that Belfast is up there, definitely with nightlife and yeah, in the statistics. But yes, obviously Freshers Week is for 2 weeks, which starts I think next week, and everywhere basically in Belfast is very, very busy because it's such a small city. So it's very, very difficult to get in somewhere, or you'll be queuing for quite a while. But yeah, that's just typical of Belfast. But yeah, so if yeah, I definitely enjoy the nightlife in Belfast. I've been to quite a lot of cities in the rest of the UK, and it definitely is on par with them as well. But the options that are available, if I don't go out clubbing, I'm currently in my master's year, so I'm definitely going to not spend as much time clubbing this year because I'll be very busy. So yeah, there's markets in Belfast that are very good, and as I work with accommodation, a part of my role is to organise events and trips at the weekend. So so there's obviously that to do, and obviously if you don't enjoy clubbing, you can also go out just for a casual drink, go out for food, and that's how I basically spend my time at the weekends. That's for sure, yeah. And I'll hand back to you.
Wonderful, thank you, James. And so on to our final question of the warm-up webinar, University of Sheffield. So Eleanor, how is housing allocated at your university? And the dreaded question, what happens if you don't like your housemate?
So how is housing allocated? So usually in your first year, you're in halls. So this is university owned accommodation. And you just apply for this like on the accommodation website through the university once you have a place at the uni. And typically like you make friends with people you live with, and then in your second and third year or however long your degree is, that they're the kind of people who you live with then. It all just differs depending on like your uni experience and like what you do and who you meet. For me, I lived with 9 others in my flat, and then so there were 10 of us in first year, and then in second and third year there were 6 of us living in a house. You can decide to live on your own if you want to. You don't have to live with other people, but it's just a nice way to like live with your friends. It's just a nice thing to do. It's fun as well. But yeah, if you're struggling like finding housing and stuff, then the university can help you with that. And there's a lot of like websites and stuff you can find properties. It's typically like privately owned landlords in second and third years. So it's not by the university. But if you struggle to make friends or the people you meet you don't really like, then you can like go back into halls in your second and third year. So yeah, that's that. As well, if you don't like the people you're living with, then if it gets really bad, you can like talk to the accommodation office and the university and just like, look, I don't really like where I'm living, like, can I move? And they probably will move you if they have a space and the availability for you. But if you don't like the people you're living with, doesn't mean that you're going to live alone in second and third year. You might be able to meet people out on your course, or like through societies and stuff. So I wouldn't worry. It's not be all and end all if you don't like the people you're living with. Obviously, it's not ideal if you don't. But yeah, there's like support available at university, so don't worry about that.
Wonderful, thank you, Eleanor. And that's it for all of our questions today, everyone. Once again, thank you to all of our panelists. You've all been great, really informative answers, and I hope everyone who's attended has learnt something from it. So that's the end of it. As I mentioned, you will be emailed a link to the webinar after if you've registered beforehand, so keep an eye out for the email. And again, if you had any questions that weren't answered, then do attend our Russell Group Fair on Wednesday, where you can ask any questions that you have. So yeah, I hope you all have a good evening and hopefully see you on Wednesday.